Peace and blessings to you all, and welcome back to yet another video. We live in interesting times, and it is not an easy period of transition that we as the human collective are going through. We are living through times of great evolution. And just like in nature, sometimes in order to evolve, you have to cut down some trees, or you have to prune back branches, get rid of the weeds, and so on and so forth, so that more growth can take place. Just like when you want your hair to grow, you have to keep trimming it so that you get rid of all the dead bits, and that nice, fresh, healthy hair keeps growing. And that is essentially the stage in which humanity is in. For a long time, the false narratives within the matrix system have led us to believe that we are the most advanced version of human beings to ever walk this planet. But again, these are simply lies. We have been lied to in so many different ways to serve the narrative and agenda of the small handful of people who really control our world. And as I've said it before many times, our world is not fully controlled by human beings. Our world is managed by human beings that are deeply connected to Satanism and sadistic behavior, and who they truly serve are different masters. They serve beings who are not human, beings that have been upon this earth for millions of years, beings that have been on this earth for hundreds and thousands of years. Because colonization is not a man-made construct. We have to remember that as human beings, we were created in the image of the divine realms. We were created with a divine spark within us, which made us creator beings. Beings who had the ability to create through our thoughts, our words, our emotions, and our actions. But because this information has been hidden from the majority of the population for a very long time, we have forgotten who we are and what we are truly capable of. And so colonization is a construct that comes from outside of the original divine template that was in existence when Earth and human beings were created. Because we were created to live in harmony, to look after our beloved planet, to be its keepers. But as dark forces came in to manipulate the minds of men, new concepts were introduced. Concepts that were built on conquering and control. Because once upon a time, humanity, we all lived in harmony with each other and with all the other species with which we share our world. But forces that did not want to live in harmony, forces that were only about control, power, and domination, began to enter our world and started to corrupt our minds, started to corrupt the way we created, not from a place of love and harmony, but from a place of separation and control. And so what is happening in the world now, as much as it feels very negative when we look at everything happening on the news as negative, we're constantly being told that there is one massive problem after the other. Those in power are doing everything within their power to maintain their power, because 2020, 30, whatever happens between now and 2030 is the energy that will be anchored within the Earth's template for another thousands and thousands of years. I think the cycle is around 26,000 years. And so whatever energy is anchored between now and 2030 is the energy that we will experience throughout Earth's next cycle. And that is why there is so much going on today, because this is an opportunity for the light to conquer the dark, for harmony and togetherness to prevail over separation and division. And the thing is because as human beings we have free will, we all get a chance to decide whether we want to exist in the light or we want to continue serving evil, because it really is just as simple as that. All the chaos, the misinformation, the disinformation, the overload of information that is being pushed on humanity right now is to keep us in fear, is to keep reminding us that we have no control. We keep being told that this is the end of the world. Yes, it is the end of the world, but not the end of our planet, but the end of a civilization, the end of the world as we've known it. Because many civilizations have risen and fell throughout Earth's history. It's just that we only hear about the ones that serve the agenda of those who have been in control for a very long time. But because of the different astrological placements, because of the cosmic energies that are coming in from our sun, from Sirius, our central sun, and from the center of the cosmos, new waves of information are coming through, codes of truth and codes of remembrance, energies that will help us to remember who we really are. Because remember, we are soul beings having a physical human experience. And we came here to return Earth to her original template. And that is why there are so many people on the planet, because how can you control billions and billions of people? It's very difficult. And whilst they have managed to enforce certain narratives within the majority of the population, since 2020, well, since 2012 first and then again in 2020, we have seen massive cycles of humanity awakening to the truth of the world we really live in, and awakening to the truth of who they really are. Because once we remember that the way our world is controlled is through the manipulation of energy, the manipulation of frequency, the manipulation of our perception, and therefore how we behave and think within the world, is how they have continued to dominate us for so long. But now is a time where truth is coming out, where new information that was once erased of ancient civilizations, that changes history, because history is his story, the story of the victors. And it's interesting because history has really been about his story, his being man, because we have lived in a very patriarchal world in which the feminine principles have been totally obliterated and been made to seem less important and even weak. But when you remove the feminine principles of harmony and intuition and empathy and flow and connection to nature, then we experience the kind of world we have been living in, a world that is devoid of connection, a world that is devoid of empathy and compassion. And the reason why we experience war after war for as far back as we can remember is because this has been about the mass colonization of the human race. It has been about taking over our planet and making us subservient to energies that are not for us. And so when we look at what is taking place now, is we are experiencing psychological warfare. We are experiencing spiritual warfare, where they continue to try and take away our divinity, our freedom, and our sovereignty. But that will not happen. Not that millions and millions of people are awakening. And social media and mainstream media will have us believe that we are failing. But when they start throwing everything at us, it means that they're worried. They're worried that they're losing control. And so we really are living on the threshold of massive, massive change. The change can be felt within each and every one of us individually as we see the world is changing, as we begin to realize that we cannot operate in the same ways that we once did, because feminine energy is rising once again. We have been taught to revere everything that is masculine, logic, analytics, linear thinking, completely devoid of emotion once again. And look at where that's gotten us. It's gotten us to separate so much between men and women, between different races, nations, countries, cultures, ideologies, because this has all been tools for separation and control. But when we come down to the bare minimum of what it is that human beings truly all really wish for and desire, is harmony, is connection, is love and freedom, and no longer living in survival, no longer living in a world where only a small handful of people benefit while the rest of humanity suffers. There is more than enough in this world. We live in a world of complete abundance. There is more than enough money in the world. There is more than enough resources for us to all live happily and to all live in freedom. It is simply that the world in which we have been living, the matrix system, that decides how these resources are distributed. And they are not distributed in any kind of fair way. But the world is changing. The world is awakening to the reality of the tactics that are being used to control us. But the more we take back our energy, our minds, our emotions, the more we master these aspects of ourselves, the less we allow the shadow, hidden aspects of us, the aspects of us that are created as a result of trauma that we experience. Trauma that we experience in a world that continues to traumatize us systematically. But we are awakening, and we are mastering these aspects of us so that we can create from our divinity, so that we can create consciously as opposed to creating unconsciously. So let us see what the cards have to say. The first card we have is Brush, being of service, not needing to know the whole picture, trust in the process. And we have a beautiful image here of an artist. Look at all of that color. It makes me think of an explosion within the cosmos. As we look up at the stars, as we look into the Milky Way, these are the colors that govern the system in which we live. And we are being called to be of service. As I said, human beings were created by the divine realm to be nurturers of this planet, to tend to this planet. And if we look at Earth as a gigantic garden, rather than weeding it and planting beautiful flowers and making sure that everything is watered and we've gotten rid of the weeds, we've just left our garden become completely fucked up. Let's just say it as it is, because we have forgotten that we were created to be of service to this planet. And right now we are being called to be of service once more. And we don't need to know what the whole picture is, because just as when an artist begins, they don't always know when they are working in flow. They just allow their paintbrush to guide them. Just like we as human beings, we can use our intuition to guide us, our imagination to guide us, not necessarily knowing where it's going to lead us, but trusting in the process. Trusting that, remember, our intuition is the inner voice of our soul. And when we allow that voice to guide us, then we create something beautiful, something unknown, something new. And that is really what we are being called to, because for so long, humanity has just created the same old boring shit packaged in different ways. But it's time for innovation, because they say, especially the scientific community and Silicon Valley and all of those who are involved in technological development and advancements, we have become subservient to technology that is not benefiting us. Yes, we have more technology than we did before, but this technology is about controlling us as opposed to allowing us to experience more of our divine selves. So the next card we have is Flea Circus. Absolutely. We've been living in some kind of flea circus. It says, take a close look. Many details, yes. When we stop to really pay attention to the world in which we have been living, we start to notice the patterns. You know, it's funny because so many people who have spoken of conspiracy theories, you know, I like to call myself a conspiracy factualist, because those of us who take a closer look and look at the many details of the world in which we live, we start to notice patterns. Patterns that keep emerging, patterns that show something is not right. And finally, the conspiracy facts that people have been shouting from the rooftops for many, many years, finally they are being seen open in the light of day, because now they cannot be ignored anymore. We cannot ignore what is happening right in front of us. And so we do need to be paying we do need to be paying more attention and having a closer look at what is really happening in our world, because something isn't wrong. We've been living in a total flea circus where we're being told that there is some kind of structure, but it's structure to create more chaos. And the chaos is only possible when we give them control over our ability to create, by having them take over the narrative, by allowing them to shape the way we think and therefore behave. But it's time to change. It's time to take back our power. The next card we have is Catcher. Up to the challenge. Perfect timing. Spirit of time. Yes, that ball is flying through the air and we are ready to catch it. We have caught this new energy that is flowing through our world, ready to change the world, because remember, the world is controlled, the physical world is controlled by non-physical energies. Things that we cannot see, such as our imagination, our intuition, our thoughts, our emotions. These are things that cannot see, yet they are what drive us. So it seems that you who are here has heard the call, you felt the pull to be of service, to be one who changes the world, as opposed to being a victim, one whose energy is used to fuel the matrix system that serves just a small handful of people. And we are taught to believe that we have some semblance of freedom, we have some semblance of choice. But again, I'll say, if you are given 3 choices, that doesn't mean that you have a choice. Freedom means that you have infinite choices, that you can choose and do whatever it is that you desire, because that is how you were created by the Most High. We were created to use our spark of divine inspiration to create something of beauty, not to create more destruction, perversion, and immorality. Because those who have been governing our world, those whose powers are falling, have taught us to believe that that is the way the world is. But there is so much more. And that's why they have limited our perception. They have limited how much of our brain we're actually using, because this is what the education system does. It forces us to use just a small fraction of our brain, because they want machines. They want beings who are subservient and who will enforce their will as opposed to enforce our free will. So the next card we have is Medicine Guardian. Be open to healing information. Yes. Now, healing information comes in many different forms. Information isn't only what you find on TV and in books. The highest and most healing information of all is the information that you will receive through your intuition. When you stop and pay attention to the little voice, when you tune out of all of the chaos, of all of the noise that is specifically being targeted at humanity at this time, to keep us dormant, to keep us confused, to keep us in fear, to keep us feeling that we have no control over what is taking place. But that is absolutely not true. We have total control, because at any point we can decide, I am not going to believe this false information that they are pushing at us. I will not believe what other people tell me about who I am. I will not believe the false information that has been implanted into us for thousands and thousands of years, because we are simply the sum total of our beliefs, beliefs that have been programmed into us. So the best thing that you can do now is to start to question, why do you believe the beliefs that you do? And do these beliefs serve you, or do they serve the matrix system in which we live? The false gods that have been controlling humanity for a very long time. So open yourself up to receive new information, not information that exists within this matrix system, but information that comes in different forms, internal downloads, new information that is being channeled through beings who have the ability to bring in higher information, just like these card readings do. Simply bringing new information and new perspectives that will help you empower yourself, as opposed to remaining a victim to a system that keeps you trapped. The next card we have here is Spirit Fox. Trust your talents in changing times. Yes. It's interesting to hear that many people are not having an easy time, and that's normal considering everything that's happening now. The systems of the old world are crumbling, systems on which we were programmed to trust and to believe above all else. This is why I always laugh when I see all these fucking fact checks all over the internet, because remember, the internet was a tool that was first used by the military before it was used and shared with the rest of the masses as a tool to control the flow of information. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but since 2012, there's been a lot of censoring that's happening. A lot of information that is not being allowed to see the light of day, because that would give humanity too much control. Because when you control the flow of information, you control the way people comprehend the world, the way they see the world, the way they operate in the world. But let's say you're building a house and half the information is omitted, your house is not going to be very sturdy. Let's say you're not given the plans of how to build a good foundation, so you end up building a foundation that is going to fall apart in a matter of years. You'll build your house and your house will look magnificent, but in a few years' time, one small gust of wind can come and plow your house down to the ground. And so it's time that we open ourselves to higher realms of information, because the information that is being poured into us by the mainstream media and all these institutions that we have been taught to trust, well, they're definitely not serving us. And remember, what's beautiful about when we are put through challenging times is we discover talents that we didn't even know that we had. So become aware to the talents that you've discovered about yourself in these recent years. In the years that we have been put under more and more pressure. But remember, diamonds are created under pressure. And so you, beloved soul, are a diamond in the making. You just probably aren't even aware of some of the incredible abilities that you have at this time. Abilities that maybe didn't work in the old world, but abilities that will be rewarded in this world, a world that is slowly building, that prioritizes connection, community, love, harmony. It's about coming together as opposed to separating. When we realize that, yes, we have different skin colors, we come from different cultures, we have different sets of beliefs, and we have been taught to believe that all that is different separates us. But what if we were to celebrate each other's differences and learn from them? Because we have taught to believe that if we don't agree, then we can't get on. But what if we just agree to disagree and get on nonetheless? Because right now what is happening is they are creating more and more division based on our beliefs. But why can't we have different beliefs and still get on? Because we can. It's just that we have prioritized the wrong things. It's time that we prioritize things that matter, things that connect us rather than separate us. We all just want to have a better human experience. We want our families to be safe, to be healthy, and to have all that they need. Why can't we focus on that rather than continuing to focus on separation? The next card we have is Medicine Mother. Honor your inner knowing, because we have been taught to question our intuition, to not trust it. But how many of you have followed your intuition and noticed that your intuition is never, ever wrong? How many of you have noticed that when you don't follow your intuition, things tend to go wrong? Because the intuition is the voice of the soul, and your soul is divine. Your soul has access to infinite wisdom. Wisdom that comes from a much higher frequency than all the bullshit that is being pushed at us on earth at this moment. And so trust your inner knowing, and especially for the women, but men also have intuition. But because we have been living in a patriarchal society, women's inner knowing hasn't been followed, and yet a woman always knows. That is the power of the woman, and that is why the matriarchal lineage that was in existence as the first civilization that ever existed upon this planet, known as Lemuria, was a matriarchal society where humanity lived in harmony with one another. And as ego crept in and the need to dominate over others, masculine qualities started to take over, that is when we saw the rise of Atlantis. And we all know what happened to Atlantis. Atlantis fell apart because the scientists and the corrupt priesthoods were visited by dark forces that pushed them to develop technology and to open doorways into other dimensions so that darker forces could come through. And these are the forces that have been guiding the development of humanity since then. And Atlantis fell, I don't know, I want to say maybe 12,000 years ago, maybe even further back. It's hard to really know the timeline since our calendars have conveniently been changed. So honor the knowing of the Divine Mother. The next message we have is Magic Guardian. Unlock the magic within. So again, interesting how we have a melanated woman to represent Medicine Mother and honoring the inner knowing, following by another melanated queen who talks about awakening the magic within. Because also right now, what we are experiencing is the awakening of the African people, of the melanated people all across the world. And what most people don't realize is that melanin is a superconductor for frequencies coming in from the sun and the cosmos. And that is why all those with melanin, all those who were the original indigenous people of Earth, because if we look across the world, all indigenous people of the world that had melanin were oppressed. And their cultures were stripped away from them, and they were forced to convert to Islam and Christianity, religions that were created to keep humanity subservient, to keep us disconnected from the divine realms, because these religions brought in intermediaries, priests, rabbis, imams, telling you that you could not connect to the Most High yourself. It had to be done by an intermediary who was superior to you. But what makes them more connected to the divine than you? Absolutely nothing. Because isn't it interesting that these intermediaries are involved in all kinds of horrific scandals, a lot of the time involving sex with younger people, but yet we all turn a blind eye and say, it's okay. They were chosen by God. The question is, which God? Because the God that they serve is definitely not the God that I serve. So we have to take time to think about that. But now we see Africa arising, The children of Mother Earth are awakening once more and remembering their divine power, remembering the wisdom that resides within their melanin, within their bones, and within their DNA. The next card we have is Venus, and the numerology is a 3, which is all about creation, creativity. Venus, the planet of harmony, love, femininity. And what most people don't realize is that Venus was the original, the true name that was given to Venus way back when was Lucifer, the light bearer, because people have been fed so much spiritual misinformation that they get confused. And this is how we can be manipulated, because Lucifer was Lucifer and Lilith were the original rebels, the first ones who tried to awaken humanity to the fact that they were worshipping a false god, a god that wanted to control them, not to have them have their own divine experience. And so right now, the message of Venus, beloved, tells us that it is time for the divine feminine energies to rise once again, for us to prioritize things that have been forgotten for a long time: harmony, beauty, love, connection. And it's interesting because when we look to ancient civilizations such as Kemet or ancient Egypt, one thing that we know is that a lot of these ancient civilizations were extremely advanced because they prioritized spirituality over anything else. And spirituality is a feminine principle, whereas religion is a masculine principle. Because the difference between spirituality and religion is that spirituality allows you freely to follow the inner calling of your soul, whereas religion forces you to follow dogma and rules that have been created by external forces, man. Because isn't it interesting that in all these religious institutions, where are the women? Women were always the ones who were more connected to the divine realms, and that is why women are the ones who give birth to humanity, because every single human being on this planet came through a woman. And yet, look at how women have been treated for thousands and thousands of years. The planet Venus is here to say, let us create now from divine feminine inspiration as opposed to external masculine rules. The next card we have here is the Well Maidens. Kindness, respect, reverence, and compassion. See how we moved from masculine energy to feminine energy here. This is all about connecting to our inner waters, becoming more in control of our emotions. And the reason why so many people lack empathy and compassion is because they are traumatized. Trauma creates hatred and separation because hurt people hurt people. Broken people break people. But when we heal our inner selves, when we heal our inner emotions, we develop compassion, empathy, and love for all, even those who are different to us, those who are not the same as us. Rather than separating more, let us come together and realize that we have all been victims of the same system, a system that seeks to control us, a system that seeks to feed off of our energies, to strip us of our creative powers so that we can create a reality that serves them rather than us. Because remember, we are creating our reality. That we are creating it unconsciously based on the programming that has been instilled into us by beings that want to control our world. The next card we have is the Rainbow. Sweet relief, new beginnings, a new way forward. And isn't it interesting that we started with the rainbow and here we have a man? But as we moved through the cards, we come to more feminine, ethereal energy. So it is time to allow these feminine aspects, and I'm not saying that we need to push the masculine aside. The masculine is needed. The masculine principles and qualities of life are needed because the great mother, the most high, the universe was created with a balance of masculine and feminine, with two opposing polarities. And so masculine and feminine are needed, just like man and woman are needed to create life. So we need the structure and organization of the masculine, but we need the divine inspiration of the feminine. Because the feminine comes from the cosmos, the masculine is what anchors on the physical earth. So it is about coming together and honoring both these parts of ourselves because they exist in every one of us. Within every man is a feminine principle. Within every woman is also a masculine principle because these energies exist within every single human being. And it is about honoring both of these parts of ourselves, not just one over the other. The next message we have here is stagnant waters, feeling stuck. A call for shifts, flow, and change. So as we saw, we are being called towards a new beginning. But of course, the powers that are falling, they want to maintain control. They want to maintain power. But judgment is here. And we are all being judged for our actions, some more than others. And that is what we are seeing in the world around us. They will have you believe that a lot of these natural disasters that are taking place, some of them are in fact natural disasters, but others are being created by technology, such as HAARP. You can look into it, HAARP. This was a project that was originally under the US military and was used to conduct tests that affect the weather, that affect all kinds of natural disasters. Because let's not forget that they are trying to control us. They are trying to control the narrative. They are trying to control the way we perceive the world and therefore the way we behave in it, the world that we control. So this is why many are feeling stuck. Many are feeling a call for a shift because we cannot operate in the same ways as we did in the old world. It is time to change. It is time to remember that we are spiritual beings before we are physical beings. And by honoring the spiritual first, we change the physical. So the time for change is here. If you are feeling stagnant, if you are feeling that things are not moving, then it means that something needs to change. The next card we have is Release the Petals. Transformation, death and rebirth, shedding, all change. This is essentially what we are experiencing right now. Earth is going through a serious period of transformation, death and rebirth. Earth is shedding all that no longer serves her because we have to remember Earth is a living being. We're taught to think that she's just a flying rock through space, but this is not true. Earth is alive, and that's why everything on this planet is alive. And it is time to shed all that is draining her life force, all that is parasitic in nature, that is wanting to consume her rather than help her grow, because it is time for change. It is time for us to create a new world. And last but not least, we have the return, a new story. You decide. Alignment, it's coming together. So yes, you, beloved soul, are returning to your true self. You are remembering that you are a divine being wearing a human body. You are God experiencing itself in human form. And you came here to return to your true self. Remember who you truly are so that you can once more create from divinity as opposed to creating from destruction, darkness, fear, and trauma. So I hope this message has brought you new insights. I hope this message has brought you a shift in your energy and helped you to see things from a somewhat new perspective, remembering that you are extremely powerful when you honor your spirit over your body. Much love to you all, and I'll see you in next week's video. Bye for now.